If you're making a new startup and have some fear, then look no further. Help is here, cause Concept the Cloud hears you loud and clear. We help support companies who have ideas. We work for NASA but not flying a rocket. So if you've got a problem, we're trying to solve it. Specialist knowledge right in your pocket will help you build the best minimal viable product. Hey, we're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C for your MVP. We're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C for your MVP. When you build your business from the ground and start fresh, having the best people around you isn't far-fetched. We've got the team for you. Can't stress, don't you want an ex-NASA architect? From software development to data engineering, we make it all quite appealing. We'll take your vision and help you succeed. Visit our website for all the info you need. Now, we're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C for your MVP. We're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C for your MVP. If you're making a new startup and have some fear, then look no further. Help is here, cause Concept the Cloud hears you loud and clear. We help support companies who have ideas. We work for NASA but not flying a rocket. So if you've got a problem, we're trying to solve it. Specialist knowledge right in your pocket will help you build the best minimal viable product. Hey, we're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C for your MVP. We're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C for your MVP. When you build your business from the ground and start fresh, having the best people around you isn't far-fetched. We've got the team for you. Can't stress, don't you want an ex-NASA architect? From software development to data engineering, we make it all quite appealing. We'll take your vision and help you succeed. Visit our website for all the info you need. Now, we're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C for your MVP. We're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C. 2C for your MVP. If you're making a new startup and have some fear, then look no further. Help is here, cause Concept the Cloud hears you loud and clear. We help support companies who have ideas. We work for NASA but not flying a rocket. So if you've got a problem, we're trying to solve it. Specialist knowledge right in your pocket will help you build the best minimal viable product. Hey, we're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C for your MVP. We're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C for your MVP. When you build your business from the ground and start fresh, having the best people around you isn't far-fetched. We've got the team for you. Can't stress, don't you want an ex-NASA architect? From software development to data engineering, we make it all quite appealing. We'll take your vision and help you succeed. Visit our website for all the info you need. Now, we're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C for your MVP. We're the guys that built the Mars truck. We want to help you with your startup. Yeah, years of experience and expertise. Visit C2C for your MVP.
folks. Welcome to Bank Holiday Friday in the US. Today is Juneteenth, and as it's Bank Holiday, I assume that I'll be largely talking to myself, but I figured it would be a good time to just do a sort of unstructured live stream where we go through chunks of how I work, how I build from concept into a semi-fully fledged product. There's only so much you can do on a live stream, and just generally work through, the things that we do here at Concept to Cloud on a daily basis, pretty much. So that when people try and understand how we work, we can demonstrate large chunks of this. So the idea that I had for today, and this is highly unscripted and highly unstructured, so bear with me as we work through it, is we're going to go through how to get from like an Excel model to something more structured, more secure, and easier to deliver for end users. Now, of course, what does that look like? So in the grand scheme of things, you want to start with the ability to be able to ship some data to a customer. In the example we're going to go with today, we're going to have a look at a sort of healthcare model, like, pharmaceutical pricing type thing. Completely synthetic, just trying to explore an idea together. And as we go through that, you want to be able to go from something that involves sending an Excel spreadsheet to potential customers to actually delivering a product that you can maintain, enhance, improve upon. And that can come about in a number of different ways. Now, the most obvious one is to be able to expose some form of analytic platform. And so we'll have a look in a bit at Seku, which is a tool that we build here at Concept Cloud that allows you to do open source analytics. But of course, it's not the only way that you deal with these things today. And in exploring other ideas, we're going to have a look at the potential of leveraging the data using an LLM and how to explore data sets using Seku and a bit of Claude. And then we're also going to have a look at how you might also deliver the same product using Excel, but connected to a backend data source so that you're not just shipping around static data. And then also, finally, how to potentially build out a completely custom product and what you would do to be able to, provide some of that. So with all that being said, I'm going to find the right screen. Here we go. And I'll also try and find the Zoom button as I transition across to Excel. There we go. So if I make this a bit bigger by finding Zoom. Now, I definitely don't use Excel very often, so you have to bear with me whilst I click badly around things. But I made this, synthetic dashboard the other day that's sort of reminiscent of some of the things that I've used in the past when I've been dealing with model transition and how to turn this thing into something that is, more useful for consumers, something that you can get to market quickly and really turn into a minimal viable product, as the jingle has just said at the start of this show. And so, inside of this, we've got some key metrics. This I knocked up using Claude, by the way, so bear with me. But we've got pharma, commercial, sales, performance overview, some key metrics. And then if I click through to some of the data, you can see we've got a fact table. I say you can see, let me also, apparently you can't zoom across all the tabs. There we go. So we've got a fact table, and inside this fact table, we've got date, month, product IDs, geographic IDs, and then some numbers. So if I make these columns a bit larger so we can read them, we've got patient copay, net revenue, rebate amount, so on and so on and so on. So these are fixed numbers inside of a spreadsheet. If I look through some of the others, you can see we've got dimensions. Let me once again hit zoom. I'm sure someone's going to tell me a better way to be able to zoom across multiple tabs, but there we go. Again, you've got geographic keys, the territory they're in, the state and the region, so that, this starts to be able to provide some level of linkage across the data set that you are working with. And then if I click through some of these others, we've got, then we've got pivot tables. Everyone loves a pivot table, and quite often this is how these models are then sent out to end users. So you pivot some of that data, you've then got sales by brand, made up brands, and net revenue across all of those types of things. Trend analysis, payer analysis, and this type of stuff is reasonably bog standard. If I go and have a look at the dashboard, you've got the demo dashboard, and then you've got a what if calculator that allows a user to be able to interact somewhat with the data in the spreadsheet. So if I make this a bit larger, there we go. So I made this a bit larger, and we've got scenario inputs, and so I can, pick a brand, any brand. I can say I want to do Neurocalm, and obviously the Excel spreadsheet goes to update depending on what percentage I put in and what brand and what deal. And so this is the the demo data that we are using today. And you'll find today that, I'll be open honest, I'm going to use quite a bit of Claude to be able to move data around and do different things because, it's the way that the world works these days in terms of loading stuff up. Now, if I just, let's cut back to my face just briefly. So, in terms of being able to use data and leverage the data, so many industries, organizations use AI, LLMs, Codex, Claude, Grok, you name it. There are a number of different ways to be able to do this. And you'll have seen the other day, if anyone's following the AI news, that SpaceX and Elon Musk just bought Cursor, which is a company that builds primarily an IDE, but then a lot of workflow stuff around, developer experience. To how much they spend? $60 billion on buying them out. And they were only been in trial for a short period of time, but the AI world moves so fast that I don't think SpaceX wanted to lose out on that deal, because they've obviously made a large bet, a heavy bet, on how AI is going to play out over the course of the next few years. And so betting big on one of the toolings and the infrastructure layers that sit around these LLMs, that's going to be the next big thing. And so today we'll deal a little bit with that, primarily just Claude Code, but show you how some of this stuff works. And some of this is just how it is. I saw Databricks. Databricks had a big conference on the last few days. They say that the majority, they would say this, but the majority of database build-outs are now done by their LLMs inside of the stack and aren't done by humans, managed by humans, optimized by humans. It's largely LLM-based, and this is just the way of the world. Now, of course, the difference is when you're building out some of this stuff is it's easy enough to vibe code your way through chunks of this, ask the questions, build the thing out. But how do you know what it's doing is right? If you're going to start using Claude to be able to do data science, that's cool. But at the same time, how do you know the questions that you're putting into the black box and the formulas and the data that it is outputting is actually accurate? And so you still have to have a data engineering team, a data science team, depending on what you're doing, to be able to ensure that the data consistency, data availability, and data quality is what you need it to be. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but the LLMs are not great at adding, largely because of the way that they work through their data, and they are obviously improving. And the way that you construct a question for an LLM allows that to vary wildly. But at the same time, you still need to make sure that when you ask the question, you're getting the right answer, and so that still requires some semblance of having someone who knows what they're doing. So this is why organizations engage with us and come and leverage our skill set and knowledge, because it's both the output from a data quality perspective, but it's also how you interact with that data. And that's also key to any product build out. You can't build a product and just chuck the data in there and ensure that, assume that a user is going to be able to A, understand what they're doing, and B, want to interact with that product so that they use it on a regular basis and don't find just different ways of doing things. So the user experience and the user interface that drives that user experience is also, absolutely critical to your organization as product. And I talk about products, but it's not necessarily just an outbound facing thing. You don't have to sell anything, But if you make something available to users inside of your organization, you're effectively shipping a product. And if that product doesn't work in the way that it should work, then you're going to have to deal with far more requests for data coming in, people not understanding how things work, and really having to like leverage humans when you're already paying for a product that should be doing the job. And so, ensure that along with the data quality and the understanding, that you're also building out a product that makes sense. If you do not do that, you've got good data and a bad product, no one's going to use it. If you've got a good product but bad data, no one's going to trust it. Now, the latter is worse, but they both, strike a chord in a lot of the projects we've seen over the years. Anyway, so I have digressed. I am going to now go in and, like I said, today is very much we'll just figure out what happens as I work through some stuff. So I have no preconceived notion. If people are joining the live stream, then welcome to something that's very much unplanned, but that's bank holidays for you, I think, isn't it? So I am going to do a couple of things first. So I was thinking earlier about, a lot of the ways that people do a lot of people, let me just switch on light mode because Hop will play better with it. Or will it not? Let me restart it and see if I can get it better. So, a lot of people, when they come to use data these days, want to default to using a environment that's notebook driven, because notebook driven development for data engineering is just something that if you've come from any type of like university background, is likely to be something that you've leveraged. You've got a Jupyter notebook, you've got a Databricks notebook, you've got a Mother Duck notebook, you've got Snowflake, you name it. Like all of these environments give you some form of like notebook driven development. And that, works all right. But the problem is if you're not a software developer, which no offense to a lot of the engineers that do a lot of the data science stuff, but your coding skills are probably not that great. Now, of course, also these days you can use LLMs to be able to like write the code, but also their coding skills inside of the constructs of a notebook are not necessarily great either. And so sometimes you just end up with awful code. And so if you're a smaller shop and you don't want to like have a whole bunch of technical debt, one of the things that can become quite nice is to use a tool a little like Apache Hop. Now, for anyone who doesn't know Apache Hop, it used to effectively, it spawned out of, I will correct that slightly, it spawned out of Pentaho data integration. So Matt Casters, Bart and co were working on PDI back in the day. When Pentaho sold to Hitachi, Apache Hop was sort of basically spun up at that point. And it wasn't like because of the licensing agreement and the laws and stuff, it's not like a clone. It was rewritten from the ground up, but, with the same sort of GUI driven ethos in mind. And these days it's continued onwards into like a very flexible, very tunable ETL tool, of which I am very much an amateur. I do not use it that often. And I downloaded it literally before this show. And this is like the first time I've opened it up in quite a while, just because of where my job is. I don't have to do a bunch of ETL work. But at the same time, if I'm dotting in and out of doing data transformation and loading things, and I wasn't wanting to maintain a software pipeline, which a lot of us aren't, Apache Hop is sort of like the go-to tool these days for ETL work. In no way affiliated. It is Apache Software Foundation project. If you go to hop.apache.org, you'll find an awful lot more. And the guys primarily in Belgium, but also around the globe, maintaining Apache Hop do a sterling job. So if you need to have an ETL tool, and of course this is the GUI bit, there is very much a sort of scale out engine under the hood that runs this, on a pipeline that you can go and use. So I'm sure people are going to like start shouting at me when I start doing this really badly. But so I'm going to create a pipeline. Inside this pipeline, because of what we've just been looking at, I'm going to have a go here. So I haven't done this in years, but we're going to open up an Excel input. And in here, I want to be able to add a file. So they also get some UX feedback for free at this point, because I'm trying to work out what these icons mean, and it's not entirely true. Oh, I've already broken it, so that's a good start. So I'm going to hit that one. And then I need to find out where I've saved this Excel file. So let me go back to Excel, file, I think it's projects, Farmer Cube, yeah. So, okay. So if I go to my projects directory, and then somewhere in here we've got Farmer Cube. If I open up that one, there we go. So I should, technically speaking, be able to add that in here. Still can't read it. There we go. Delete this column. Delete selected lines. So, of course, you can read multiple Excel spreadsheets. This is me just very slowly going through how to set this thing up. You can send them in via a field as well. It doesn't have to be set in stone. Now I'm going to get sheet names. And if this works, here we go. So I know that if I'm going to do data modeling with this, and I'm going to stick this stuff in a database so it's not in Excel, I don't need all of this stuff. So I don't need the overview. I don't need the dashboard. I don't need the what if calculator. I don't need those pivots. Do I need the data dictionary? I do not know. I've not clicked on that. Let's have a look. I do not need the data dictionary, so I will also get rid of that one. So that means that we've then got the sheets selected for the fact table, the date, the product, the prescriber, the geography, the pair, and the demographics. And I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to hit content fields. So now I'm going to show you how to do this in the way that I know, which is not probably the best way to do it. But like, because you've got a whole bunch of different stuff coming in, and if I then hit preview on this and preview 1,000 rows, it will try and open that up. Okay, here we go. So I'm then going to open this up. Now you can see over here, because there's no joins, everything here ends up null, which is obviously not what you want as an end user. So I will go back to sheets, because the idea is with the sheets is you end up with stuff that is of the same column type. They have the same columns and you can stitch them together. I cannot do that. There is no obvious join without me then going and do more stuff. So I'm going to, for now, get rid of those, get sheet names. I will get fields once again, and I'm going to preview that. And this time, you're going to see that I have just the fact information, and that was what we were looking at in the spreadsheet back at the start. So I'm going to close that down because I am happy with it. There's no additional output fields at the moment. But of course, what I need to do is give it a proper name. So this is like fact input. There we go. So I've now got fact input, and I want to be able to, let's see, copy and paste this a bunch because I need the same for my other sheets. Now, Hop has a whole like metadata layer that allows you to like do this dynamically. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but there's an awful lot of stuff I will do here that is like longhand for stuff that you could do in a far more programmatic way. But in the interest of me just like figuring out how to get stuff into a database, this works quite nicely. So if I get rid of that one, delete selected lines. Now this time if I go to fields and I go get fields from header row and hit the preview button, this time you're going to see obviously it becomes the date dimension. So this table has a whole bunch of date information in it. Date key, the actual date, the year, the quarter key, the quarter month, month name and a day. So like, you know, if I scroll through that, it is literally just a table of dates. I'm going to shut that down. I'm going to hit, I'm going to call that one dim date and input. I'm going to go for conformity, and now I'm going to move on to the next one, and I'm going to do this a couple more times. So hit edit again, I'm going to go to no, I'm not. I'm going to go to sheets. Going to hit delete, get sheet name. I want dim product. Okay, fields. Nope, I hit the wrong button. Delete those, get the header, there we go. So now this time it's the product. So again, if I look at this, there's only 15 products, which is nice. And that is the sum total of that table. And so this one is, dim product input. I'm going to edit again and do it wrong every time. There we go. Sheet. I'm going to get different sheet name. That one is going to be dim prescriber. I'm going to remove the FactRx. I'm going to remove all of these. I don't actually know if I need to. Let me try it. So if I do get things from there, oh, there you go. You don't need to delete them. I can just do that. Preview again, just show you what's in them, make sure it works. So you've got prescriber MPI, prescriber name, specialty, and some other stuff. I will hit OK. No, I won't. So this one is dim prescriber input. Okay, we're getting there. So then copy you a few more times. Edit. Of course, in reality, these might be different data sets, different inputs. They might come from databases. They might come from Excel spreadsheets, but at different times. You know, there's a whole bunch of different reasons why you would get these in separate sheets. Some stuff won't change. Like, for example, you know, it's unlikely that if you had a full geographic dimension that you would then have to update it very often. So stuff like this is very much like, just because I'm demonstrating it. Oop. Dim geography. If I go back in, we are getting there. So get sheet names, dim geography, dim pair. There we go. Delete selected lines, fields. There we go. So not any pairs. Oop, I forget every time. Dim pair input. Sheets. Demographic, last one. Here we go. So dim demographics. I'm going to delete that. Fields, get fields in row. Yes, there we go. Preview this. Okay. There we go. So there's some demographic information. It's very light, but it does for demonstration purposes. Dim demographic input. Okay, so we've got our different inputs. I want to just make that one. There we go. So then the idea is with Apache Hop is there's then like a trillion different things you can do with it. So if you wanted to do a bunch of data cleanup, you know, they've got data quality steps, standardized phone number. I could definitely have done with that over the years. You've got different flows. So, you know, you can filter, merge, split things up. And then, like, you know, obviously we're using Excel here. Ooh, clicked the wrong button. But we're using Excel here. But, like, you know, if you actually wanted to really bring in data from wherever you are in your organization, the input is normally quite important. So, you know, as an input into Apache Hop, you can use Tika, Avro, SQS, CSVs, data grids, like JSON files, Google Sheets, databases of almost any type if there's like a JDBC driver for it or an ODBC driver for it. Like, it is entirely extensible. And you can obviously write your own or get your data to a staging point and then load it up from a CSV or whatever makes sense. Like, getting data in is not hard. Equally, getting data out is also not that onerous when you've got, you know, Google Sheets output, HTTP post, you know, Parquet file output, so you can stick it straight into DuckDB or whatever, text files. Like, you know, you can do a whole bunch of stuff with this. And then when you can't do stuff with this, there's then the scripting blocks that then allow you to do a bunch of other stuff. So you can write some Java straight in the thing. You can execute some SQL directly on a database. You can write some JavaScript. But the main ones that you would end up using as an end user in Apache Hop world is transform, because you want to be able to take the data that you're bringing in and you would then want to be able to transform it. So you might want to either be able to drop fields. So what I could have done potentially is done some funky filtering and select values from one Excel input. But I chose to like split them up, which to me makes more sense. But you can like select values, deal with data formatting, all that type of stuff. Row normalizer to start cleaning and pivoting columns, splitting fields if they're conjoined in some way, mapping of values. I've never seen language model chat, but that sounds quite fun in terms of like ETLing stuff, but it may also be quite slow and quite costly. So like depending on what you're trying to do, there are a number of different things that you can do inside of here. Apache Hop will allow you to do almost anything, and at the same time not writing any lines of code, which is, you know, super cool from a small organization perspective, but also a larger organization. Like, you know, if you don't have to maintain a code base, I would consider that to probably be a win. And if you can give Apache Hop to, you know, a random selection of users and allow them to interact with it in a way that doesn't mean that they have to learn all the ins and outs of how to write to a database using Python, or how to write to a CSV file, or read in bulk or parallel, scale up, you know, all that type of stuff. Because yes, they can ask an LLM to do it, but if you've already had the experts write the code, why would you not just leverage that and be able to do it on repeat? And that is like the crux of an awful lot of like notebook-based ETL work, is like it's bespoke and unique every time. Now, of course, you can use some semblance of libraries to be able to do repetitive stuff, but the core of like your ETL process is probably going to be the same across most of the organization. And so, you know, not having to write the code, you know, your total cost of ownership diminishes because you don't have to do as much stuff. Anyway, so I'm gonna try and attempt to connect this to a database. So inside of here, I'm gonna do that, and then I've got to remember how to connect the dots. There we go. So if I hit the shift button and drop this on table output, you can see that I've drawn a line between the two steps. Now, because my data is nice and clean, I don't really have to do anything. Famous last words, I'm sure, but like for now, if I edit that and edit this, locally I should have a Postgres database. So let me see if we can connect to this. Now, this has definitely been a while. So Postgres installed driver, username, I think it is that. And then I'm going to do localhost, and then we need to create a database. Let me just test that first. Okay. So told you this was live. Let me transition back to, you can see my face for a second whilst I was going twiddle the dials inside of Postgres. I've completely lost my terminal. Why can't I say it? That's new. Like, why can't I see? I'm in it. It's just I've swapped it to light mode. I don't recognize it. There we go. That's my day. I'm trying to find a terminal that I think is black and it's actually white because I swapped it to light mode. Okay, so let me just create a database. Because I'm supremely lazy, as I explained, I will attempt to use Claude to do it because I can never remember the Postgres commands and logins. So Claude's off. Apparently he's befuddling. But yeah, so give me 1 second whilst that works, and then we will continue onwards. I've been told to turn up my mic gain, so bear with me whilst I dive under the desk. There we go. Tweak the dials. I mean, if you can't hear me, I'll shout louder. But I'm starting to clip, so it's reasonably loud. There we go. Okay, so the demo database has been created. So if I go back to where we were, so let me back transition. There we go. So now you don't have to set my face anymore. We can definitely have a go at this. So if I now do farmer demo, with a bit of luck, if I hit the test button, I need to give a connection a name. What do I do up here? So farmer database. Let's try it once more. There we go. So connection to the farmer database was successful, and that gives us the ability to really crack on with, you know, putting the data in the right place. So that is the database connection. Now, if I hit OK and go back here, I can edit this. So now we're using the farmer database connection. Inside of here, I want to be able to pick a schema. We will use the public schema. And then I want to be able to create a table, which we definitely used to be able to do. So let me see if we can figure this one out. So we're doing fact farmer. I hit browse. Generate DDL, open SQL, truncate table. So if I click on, I'm going to guess this one. Nope, not that one. DDL, open SQL. Maybe it's not. Maybe they've moved it. Hold on. Fact farmer, SQL. Oh, here we go. So because that table doesn't exist, if I hit the SQL button, it's going to show us what that is going to look like. And so we're going to have a look at this. And then actually what I'm going to do is execute it. And then I'm going to show you how I tweak this a little bit just to make it make a little bit more sense. So if I hit execute, you can see that that's now gone and executed that, and we've got one table's worth of stuff in it. So I'm now going to cancel that because I don't need to be there anymore. And now if I hit database fields, you can see that I've not mapped anything in. We're just going to stick everything in basically as it comes. And so I should then be able to hit OK. And then I should be able to hit the run button and launch this thing, and we will see what happens. I do need to save it. I'm going to call it demo ETL. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that the engine kicks off, the hop engine, and then it's going to go and do some stuff. And so, you know, we have loaded this up. The pipeline took 2.5 seconds to run, as you would imagine. There isn't a great deal of load, but you can see if you squint at the screen, the table output, which is finished processing, and there's 250,000 records in the fact table. So not the smallest, not the largest fact table by any stretch of imagination, but, you know, does the job. So if I now go back to this table input, and then instead of hitting edit, I'm going to hit preview, we can see this is now in the fact table itself. Now, there's a few things that, as a data modeler, I would like to change. So like the RX key, the date key, and the month key all come out as doubles. So a double, sorry, and the product key and all the others. Like doubles are a numerical, you know, construct. They take up more memory, they take up more space to store. And so I don't really want those to be doubles. So there's a few things I can do as a data modeler. I can come in here, and then I should be able to change this to, instead of being a number, I actually want to be an integer. So we're going to see how this goes. So if I hit integer, 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 keep going, integer, integer, get to the end of the keys, and then we'll be good. Integer, integer. And then if I hit preview from there, what should happen, if this is right, there we go. So you can see in the preview now that these keys no longer have the decimals because they're only ever going to be 0.0. They're just numbers in a database to link to another record. So you're never going to have a decimal place. You're not losing anything by trimming that off. You're saving space. You're making the performance, if this was a larger database, that, you know, the performance would be greater. And so by doing that, I have just made my life a chunk easier. If I come back here, now inside of the database, they will still be doubles, and I don't want them to be doubles. And so the other thing I want to do, because I want to be able to run this a bunch of times, I'm going to hit truncate table. Now, of course, most people don't want to truncate their table every time they run an ETL, but I definitely do. Because of how this works, you might I don't know if I actually have to change this. So I'm going to truncate it. I'm going to hit the go button. I think we're still going to get decimals out the far end of it. So if I do that and then view output. Oh no, there we go. You can see the keys. They no longer have the decimals. Now we'll check this in the actual output data itself in a bit. I don't know if that's just being rendered like that. I missed demographic key. I don't know if that's being rendered like that because that's type of file column format has been prescribed, or if that's actually legit and they've changed it. But I'm going to go back here. I'm going to hit integer again, and then I can just hit the run button again. And basically that's going to drop and reload, truncate and reload that table on repeat. So you always end up with just that amount of data in there. If I didn't have truncate selected, then it would just keep on appending to the bottom, but of course then we'd end up with duplicate data. So I'm going to do this super fast, and then I'm going to copy, paste. I'm going to paste. I'm going to paste. Like I said, like the metadata driven element of this is far better. So, you know, read up on that rather than just copying and pasting and duplicating a load of effort, if it makes sense. I mean, but you know, at the end of the day, I'm just doing a one-off. So this is dim date. I'm going to hit OK. We're going to go and fix those keys as well on the other side in a second, so I'm not going to do too much at the moment. Dim date, dim product, edit, dim prescriber, dim geography. Dim pair and dim demographic. So over on this side, because we fixed up the keys on the other one, we then need to also change like date key to integer. We also want, well, that's actually a string because it's got Q in it. Month key, and that can be an integer. Month name obviously has a string in it, and day, well, you're never going to have a point of a day. Or if you do have a point of a day, I'll probably come and ask you what you're doing with your date modeling. So there we go. So I should be able to just prove that this still works. There we go. So now the keys don't have any decimals in them. Edit this one, and we're going to have a look at the fields. So again, we've only got one in this one, and we'll only have one in the rest, I think. So hit OK and integer, prescriber. We're going to have a look at the fields. We've got prescriber key. So I'm going to hit integer. Dim geography. Gonna hit integer again. Dim pair. And dim demographic. So if I, there we go. That one, and then as you recall from before, we join these together. There we go. And then there's various different types of joins in hops. So if you try and join something that it has a mismatch of columns, it'll warn you. If you try, you can also do hops on failure, hops on, positive loading of data. Obviously, that's also why it's called Apache Hop. So if I hit OK, there we go. So hit the execute button again. And truncate table, that's fine. And then we go through the rest of these. So edit this one. This one we're going to call dim product, truncate table, SQL, execute. Okay. Dim prescriber. Oop. SQL, execute. Okay. Dim geography. Just all we're doing is just creating all these tables. Obviously once they're created, unless of course you add new fields, you never have to do this again. So this is just me setting up the environment that we are working in. Tell you what, I'm not going to create that one because then I can show you what happens if it goes wrong. So here's my ETL. And then I'm going to hit, well, first of all, I'm going to zoom in further down here so I can actually see the screen. I'm going to hit the go button, and this should deliberately blow up, I believe. There we go. So you can see here, like table output 7, I haven't labeled, I haven't created a table for it, so it's throwing a Postgres error. The rest of it, of course, ran. So you can see down here the output that finished processing. So we'll just go and clean that one up. And so super easy. If you see errors and what have you, obviously they're highlighted. I can execute that. Okay, that. Cancel that. Okay, that. And then if I do it again, I can, there we go. So this time it ran cleanly. And like I said about the different hop types, if I drop this one over here, for example, it's going to tell me that there's been an exception because the demographic output is just different in terms of its content compared to the payer output. And so you can't just send that into the same table without joining those streams together if you were going to do something like that. And so it stops you making silly mistakes. There's different ways to be able to send that stuff in. So if I just want to copy it in, you can see that it's labeled it. But now if I go and try and run this again, and I say yes to saving, you can see here that this time table output 6 is thrown up. This one's different because the table exists, but you've got this array out of bounds exception and the set values fail. And so you know that you've done something a little bit dumb. I mean, we also got warned about it, so we've done something a lot dumb. But if I delete that and hit the go button again, there we go. So, in this first section of today, we've gone from an Excel table, an Excel spreadsheet with 250,000 facts, like, pharmaceutical pricing facts, and all the associated data, and we've got to move that to a database. This database is dead simple. It is literally just Postgres. Using Postgres because it's been around since the dawn of time. It's open source and free to use in any type of organization. It's got extension points all over the place that allow you to then go and build out additional functionality or whatever. I read a blog post from OpenAI the other week where they scaled to 800 million active OpenAI users using Postgres as the backend, and the engineering hurdles that they did to leverage that. And so, there's always scale. This will not, you do not have to use the biggest of big data platforms to be able to do something like this. Anything, short of, hundreds of millions of records will quite happily run inside of Postgres. Now, of course, you can use Databricks or another big data platform on small scale data. It just depends on your use case. But for something like this, we're keeping it simple. We're keeping the overhead simple. we're allowing for us to be able to leverage technology that's been around for a long time, because then there's a wider array of people that know how to use it, the support for it, and the way to be able to leverage it without depending solely on one data service provider. In this case, you will find, a trillion Postgres administrators around the world, but you could equally use MySQL. You could pick your other, like your favorite database, MariaDB. I'm naming the open source-ish ones, but Oracle, whatever takes your fancy, whatever you have like deployed internally, SQL Server, etc. Like super simple, loading up a few records into the database. I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to go and get a quick drink and reset, and then we're going to have a look at how we would turn this from a Excel sheet and a database into an interactive analytics platform that would allow you to then be able to deliver this to your users with minimal training effort and allow for centralized administration, and why we should do this. So I'll be back in about 5 minutes. Stick around. We'll go and get a drink, come back, and we will continue this odyssey. Okay, I'm back. I have a drink. Seems to be from Dunkin' Donuts. Circles are weird. Anyway, I'm back, and so we in the previous bit session segment, whatever you want to call today's random hackathon, we looked at getting data that was in an Excel spreadsheet model, and we have sent that data to Postgres. And so that's sort of where we left it. For anybody who is just joining, we were using Apache Hop, which if I just transition back, you can see it here. Very simple. There's no real transformation in this ETL. It's literally just extract and load, extract and load, extract and load across the board. If I hit the play button for anyone who was here before, ignore the output because I've switched back to dark mode, so it's a little bit broken. But you can see here that we've loaded the data up. So that's step one, a super high level look at how you might get data out of Excel into a database. If you want to learn more about Apache Hop, go and have a look at their docs, tutorials, all the demos, all the stuff that they provide, because it is extensive and I highly recommend it. In the meantime, whilst we were away, I asked Claude to write a Mondrian schema that then sits over the database that we have created. So for those of you who weren't paying attention or want to catch up, in the first section, we created a Farmer demo Postgres database just on my laptop here. We have loaded 250,000 facts into it, and we have also then loaded up the dimensions that go with it. So whilst I am aware that a chunk of people will hopefully understand what this means, let me click another button. Aha, there we go. I get to use the top-down camera, so hopefully the battery doesn't go flat whilst I do this, but I do want to try and explain a little bit of dimensional modeling to anybody who is new to how this stuff works, because I'm going to say words that don't make a lot of sense to various people, and I would like to be able to demonstrate in real time how this works. So let me find the right end of the pen. The other thing I also have to apologize for is my handwriting is awful. So hopefully I'm going to draw some large boxes and you will get an understanding of some of this. So I've just mentioned fact tables and I have mentioned dimensions that go with this. And so if I draw a box in the middle of here, and this is going to be fact farmer. And if I move this down a bit so you can see it better, there we go. So we've got fact farmer in the middle of here, and then I'm going to then draw a line up here, and we're going to have another box. And this one is going to be called dim date. And then somewhere down here, I'm going to draw another box, and I'm going to call this one dim geography. Let's do it shorthand. And then I'm not going to do it because I'm sort of belaboring the point, but I could then add more and more and more lines on. And so they all hang around the middle of this, what we know as a fact table. Now, a fact table, as you can probably imagine from the name, contains a number of facts. And those facts are measurable aspects to your data. Now, because of the way that we're going to do it, in our case, they're all numbers. But they could be other things, depending on what platform and what processes you are using to be able to deploy and analyze this. But the fact table is generally the core of all of these schemas. From a data modeling perspective, these are star schemas, generally because you can draw a bit of a star. If you were doing web application development or something like that, you would look more at a snowflake schema. But also with the way that the databases work these days, you might also just end up with one very wide table without the other bits around the outside. You would still model it in this sort of way, but the table itself may just be one very wide table, because the way that some analytics databases work, that works better for them. Getting too into the weeds, but you get the idea. Dimensions that sit around the outside are things that you want to be able to report against. So in this case, the date dimension will have things like years, months, quarters. It might also contain like financial reporting periods. So if you have a business year that's offset from the calendar year, you would probably put that in your date dimension. If you have different geographies, you have a geography dimension down here. We looked at some of that data in the previous period, but by doing that,
can't see the drawings.
I'm talking and no one can see it. There we go. I forgot. I knew I would do this at some point, and I forgot to push the transition button. Anyway, you can see here, I have created the farmer table, the fact farmer table, the date dimension table, and the geography. So in doing that, this is the start of our star schema. And as I was explaining, which no one could see, this allows for us to then be able to report differently. But the database under the hood, the actual tables may be laid out a little bit differently to this, but this is basically how you would model it. So stuff like geography allows you to then link to a pharmaceutical record, but without having to pollute that table with like endless amounts of ways that you want to be able to report it. Because of course, as we saw in the earlier build out, when we were talking with geographies, you're talking both like, zip codes, states, geographic locations. It may be countries, it may be continents. There's a lot of stuff in there. Your date dimension, probably, if you were to model this properly, would end up with, just 50 columns, possibly more, if you were actually going to do a full date dimension. A lot of people don't do it these days, but like if you really wanted your date dimension to be expansive, 20 to 50 columns is normal. So you don't want them to be in your fact table. So this is the type of thing that we're trying to build out using the modeling that we've just done, and now a Mondrian schema that we're then going to use for analysis. Now, a Mondrian schema itself is basically either a YAML file or an XML file that explains to our piece of software or anything else that runs basically the Mondrian OLAP server how your data is modeled in the database. There's lots of different platforms that do very similar things. They all require some sort of like understanding how this is built. And the reason that we do this is because in reality, what we want to be able to build out for our users is a standardized format that allows for repeatable analytics over the same table sets time after time. It also gives us other benefits like caching and that type of stuff. But basically what we're looking for is building a model that allows for an entire organization to be able to report the same way on the same data. So by creating these fact tables and these models, you're not then just giving the users direct access to the database. You're constraining them by the model that sits over the top, so that if you want to be able to calculate profit, for example, you've got one way of being able to create profit across the entire organization, if that makes sense, so that you haven't then got your accountants creating one profit metric versus your sales team who are trying to create it against different calculation, and that ends up skewing your numbers. And so this is why these semantic models exist over the top of your databases, and you don't just let your sales team loose on your database itself. So if I go back to sharing the screen, what I did during the break was I asked Claude to go and have a look at the database that we created. So earlier on in the show, we created a database, and if I scroll back up, make this a bit bigger as well. If I scroll back up somewhere up here, there we go. We created a database, the Farmer Demo database, and that's what we used inside of the ETL. And then I said, okay, I've loaded up various data tables. Can we create a Mondrian schema that matches these tables to run in Seku? We will get into Seku in a second. But basically, Claude then went and had a look in the Postgres database, understood how the data was created. So you can see like one row here in terms of date key, date dimension stuff. And then he's gone and created a farmer schema that sits over the top of it. It wasn't quite perfect. it didn't work the first time. So I said I logged in but can't see it. So he went to check the logs. He built a couple more tweaks into it. And then I said, it seems to be all right. And so that's basically where we've landed at this point in time. So I will now say, can you print some of a schema on this screen for people to read? There we go. So as this thing rolls through, you can see that it's printing out this XML file. And so this XML file is the farmer schema. It's got a cube in it called farmer RX. And we will get into some of these naming conventions in a little bit. But, we've got a cube, got default measure. We've got a table inside of a dimension. We've got this date dimension. We've got product. We've got prescriber. And we've got some measures and a calculated member down the bottom just for fun and games. And so this is sort of where we're at from a Mondrian perspective. And this is the model that sits over the database. So this describes how the dimensions connect to the fact table and so on and so on. And I know that I'm saying a bunch of words that are not necessarily the most obvious, but some of this will become clear in a minute when we switch to another screen. Now, we've done some quite cool stuff as well. So there is the ability for Seku to flag PII data and start to potentially scrub some of that. We have new aggregators. We haven't used any of them here, but there's various new bits that have come into Seku as well that you can then leverage to be able to show things on the screen. And so with that being said, I'm going to flip. Actually, let me do this slightly better. If I do that one, right, and then I'm going to make this a lot bigger so everyone can see what's going on. So this is Seku, and if I go straight back to the top, this is what people see when they first land inside of a Seku environment. Seku as a platform was originally conceived by myself and Paul Stolberger back in 2010-ish. And we built what was initially known as the Pento analysis tool. And then we moved on from the Pento analysis tool to Seku because, GWT as a programming language is objectively awful. And there was more that we could do just by building Seku. It was run alongside or inside of a Pento analysis server. So my background is in business intelligence from back in the day. And so we built this to make life easier. There was another tool, let me bring it up, called JPivot. And JPivot, for anybody who's old enough to remember, was the default OLAP tool that basically came with Pento, because back in the day, this was as good as it got. And so initially, you would give this to end users. And I remember in the organization where I was running this, I would give this to end users and they would be like, what am I supposed to do with this? And that was always a problem, because it was never obvious how JPivot worked. This is quite an easy view for them, but I don't know if there's some more complex ones. Yeah, so like in here, you would have stuff like this where like trying to like filter by time, etc. is a interesting experience where you have to like go through the nested bits. You have to try and understand what you're trying to see. So we try to make life easier for people. My goal in life is always to make data more accessible. This has generally been what I have done through my career. And so Seku was born out of that. And so we have stewarded Seku over the years. It was dormant for a while, and now we've picked it up and have built out Seku Cloud. So if you want to use a managed version of this, Seku Cloud is available to anybody who wants to give it a go, where we host the Seku server and connect to whatever database you would like on the far side, or you can upload files and those types of things as well. I'm going to open up this Farmer RX cube because it's the one we've been working on. And the idea, as we started this sort of show today, was to show how you could go from running things in an Excel centric world to something that you could then expose to your end users that allows for the data to remain fresh. It's not like hooked in directly and embedded into an Excel sheet, and really allow people to be able to, like, you know, dynamically inspect and interact with the data. So this is the output of that cube that we were looking at not that long ago. And so inside of here, you can see there is date, there is demographic, there is geography, there is payer, there is prescriber, product, and RX type. And so if you wanted to then start doing interactive analysis or have your end users do interactive analysis, it is pretty straightforward. So if I drop, I say that, I haven't actually tried this cube, so it may end up like firing off errors, but we will see. Yeah, okay, so if I drop in year, yeah, we need to be able to deal with the point, but like that's fine. And then if I actually wanted to understand the quantity over a month period, I can also drop that in. And so you can see here we've now got a reasonably basic table that allows us to show quantity over, you know, the 2 years worth of data that we have inside of the platform. If I wanted to then be able to, like, you know, understand how the quantity then mapped out to days supply, I could chuck in days supply. And so you can see, you know, the supply versus the quantity metrics. But then, you know, this is all pretty straightforward, but this allows people to be able to really delve into the data in a flexible manner. Now, if you wanted to be able to understand how that played out by state, I could either drop that into the rows. Let me do this in two different ways. So if I drop that into the rows, you can see, let's see if I can flip these around. Sometimes a little bit fiddly. Let's take that back out. Year and month. So you can see here that by orientating them this way, you've got Illinois, and then you've got the year and the month, and how that quantity and day supply has been dealt with there. And you can see Michigan down below, and so obviously you can go down through this and see how that data is mapped out. Now, that's one way of doing it, but the whole point of doing this analysis is allows for cross tabs and like what Excel users know as pivot tables. And so if I then take geography and stick it up on the top, you can see suddenly we've gone and pivoted that data to then really show it in a different manner. So here we've still got Illinois, but we've got quantity and day supply on the top. We've got Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, etc., as we go out in that direction. And now rather than having a super long table, we've got, you know, the dates down the side. If I wanted some additional stats, I can then pull up additional stats on that information. So min, max, average, standard deviation across those measures that we're using. And then there's things like spark lines and what have you, which you can then, where it makes sense, you know, this isn't a great example for a spark line, but, you know, you can start to show that information across multiple data sets, trends over time, that type of stuff. There is also, I believe, a spark bar. So again, if I went and whizzed over to the far side, you get a slightly different view. But that's because you've got the years in, it skews the smaller ones, which is why it looks like they're all zero. It's just a volumetric thing. But that sort of gives you an idea as to like how the like high level analysis worked. But then if you were interested in like just a specific year, I could say, okay, keep only 2024. Suddenly I've trimmed down that data set. And that allows me to show just the 2024 information. And then if I was only interested in a number of different geographies, but not all of them, rather than just picking one, I could say, open up the filter here and then show me, you know, Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, because they're 3 in a row. There we go. And you can see how that then changes for, you know, the view that you're trying to show. And so depending on how you want to be able to demonstrate this to, or allow your users to be able to interact with the data, you can do this either via filters, or you can do it via the security as well. So one of the things that we like to be able to do as an organization is allow for like standardized data sets. But then if someone logged in who was only allowed to see the Illinois data, even though they ran the same query as everyone else, they would only see the Illinois data. If someone was from Michigan and they were only allowed to see the Michigan data, they would only see that, and so on and so on and so on. And this obviously allows for a user to then be able to build out a repeatable query that they would then be able to save. I'm the admin, so let me call that one Farmer Demo. Hit the save button. That'll save. And so now we've got a very basic table. Now, of course, you also want to be able to see stuff graphically. So if I hit the chart button, we can then see how this breaks down over time. Of course, what you might want to do is not show both the measures on the same screen, or you want to be able to show them slightly differently. So if I take out quantity, for example, if I take out day supply, now you're just seeing a graph that demonstrates the quantity of, sales effectively inside of this farmer data set over the 3 different geographic areas that we wanted to be able to see. But then say you want to be able to see it differently. So I want to come in here and instead of seeing a bar, or I want to be able to understand it across the totality of that area, I've now gone and stuck all the quantities on top of each other. So you've then got a total sales, but at the same time, then it's only showing the months of sales down the bottom. Now you'll also see down here, it's taken out 2024 as a year, because most of the time if you're charting this, you don't want to see the parent and all the children. So this is really a good way of being able to allow for users to be able to interact with the data. And again, you could do line charts, you can do area charts, there's a lot of stuff that we have built in here that really allows people to be able to interact with data in a way that allows them to see stuff in, a manner that they want to be able to, allows them to understand. Pie chart's probably not the best example here, but again, it gives you the option to do it. You can come in here, you can change a number of the different properties for each chart, save it, trend lines, all that type of stuff, which really allows you to be able to customize a chunk of this quite nicely. I haven't done this on the fly, so let's see if I save that. Does it give me one? Yes, but it's down the bottom. So that gives you the ability to chart a bunch more and really show a lot of stuff to end users that then have the ability to go and interact with this. Now, of course, not every end user wants to necessarily be able to interact with a chart in an interactive manner like this. They may just want to be able to consume the highlights. So inside of the dashboard, I can create a new dashboard. And so from here, if I just hit the create button, and then I can add a tile. And so Juan, who works for us on the dashboard team here, has done an excellent job of sort of building out the ability to add different stuff into a dashboard, add tiles, add information. So if I really create one of these and then hit the button down here, I've saved a Seku file. This is the one from before, obviously, that then allows me to then stick this in here. And so what you can then do, if I actually cancel that one, hold on a second, because I picked chart twice. If I add a tile and then add a table, I can then go back and instead of rendering all of it, there we go. So you could choose to either show a chart or a table or a chart for the same data so that people can obviously interact with that data in a very similar manner. Now you can also add filters to this. So if you want to then be able to filter by specific, state, for example, if I then pick Michigan, you can see how it's then gone and adjusted the filter state so that it's filtered purely by Minnesota, and really gone and allow people to interact with that data without also having to create the analysis in the first place. So normally inside of here, you would then have a number of different tiles, all showing a variety of different data. Some of it fixed, some of it might be KPIs, some of it may be the tables that we looked at or the charts. And, obviously you can resize these elements to fit and then allow people to be able to interact with that data in a manner that, is more accustomed to a dashboard environment. You can save that, you can share it. They're all versioned, so you can roll backwards and forwards when you're doing this stuff. But this is, primarily the driver for how the Seku platform as a UI allows you to interact with the data itself. So that allows us to then move on to some complete experimentation. So I told you today was going to be rather about experimentation. Up until now, most of it has been sort of reasonably straightforward, but we're going to delve into the potential for doing some aspects of this stuff using a build out that allows us to like really customize the stuff that we're going to work on. So if I go back over here and actually remember to hit the right button this time. So what we want to be able to do for a, for a product build out, if this was for real, is like, be able to allow for a number of different interfaces on the same data, because what we're really trying to do is allow for the reuse of data and the consistency of data across an entire platform, entire product base, so that you haven't got duplicate data, you don't have to manage it twice, and really allow for that sort of security and logic to play itself out across an entire organization, so that you then have a lot more consistency in the data that you own inside of your platform. So what we've looked at so far, we've gone from, and again, I apologize for my handwriting, which you can actually see in real time this time. If I go from here to then like adding, this is our Excel sheet. Now, of course, the data that got fed into Excel has come from a range of different places. That's probably a database that you've already got in your system. So that, if you're moving away from an Excel distribution model, might go away. But then what we've done so far is then hand this off to Seku. So I will, just so you can play buzzword bingo, this is an OLAP browser. So Seku is an OLAP browser. It runs OLAP models. That's the XML file that we designed back at the start of the second phase. But of course, what you end up doing is then allowing, let me draw my favorite stick person. So Stick Person interacts with Seku OLAP from a UI, basically the thing that we have just done. So they can come along, they can click, they can look at some dashboards, they can look at some reports, they can do a range of different things, just dragging that data around. And because they have to log in, that is also secure in terms of allowing them access to only to the data that they're allowed to see. And it's consistent across the organization. They could have a range of different cubes, a range of different models to look at, but they all come from the same place and are served by the same service. Now, of course, these days, there's a bazillion and one different ways of being able to interact with the data that's inside your database. Of course, the most obvious one that I'm about to draw down here is an LLM. So, assuming you've not been living in a barn, or even if you've been living in a barn, if you haven't heard of an LLM, we're basically talking about ChatGPT, Claude Code, Codex, some model that allows you to be able to type something into it, Gemini, all those types of things, and then you get an output out the far end. So a large language model, that's what LLM means, and it means basically you type something in and you get text back as a response. Now, of course, LLMs have the ability to then interact with a range of different tooling. And so one of the things that we've built into Seku is allowing it to then interact with an OLAP cube using a couple of different APIs, like interface layers into an application. So one of the services that has been made trendy by Anthropic is a service called an MCP. And that service allows for interactivity between an LLM and a backend service. But not everything needs to use an MCP server. So we also have, they're sort of tied into one another, but basically an AI API. And that allows for like programmatic access and querying of anything inside of the Seku OLAP service. It uses the same security, it uses the same models, and that means that then your LLM is then being constrained as to what it can do by the data that's coming from Seku. This obviously then allows for users to be able to ask questions, but not have like free reign of a database where the LLM might try and stick multiple tables together that don't make sense, because we've already defined what that model looks like up here. A user or an LLM that is being used by a user then doesn't need to figure out what that model looks like. So, you know, another stick person. There we go. Stick person types something in. Request goes to LLM. LLM then queries Seku. Seku gives it a response. Response goes back to Stickman. So that allows us to then build out an interaction that we're going to try in a minute. And like I said, I haven't tested any of this. And it runs in Seku Cloud. I haven't tried it locally on a laptop in a while. So this is where it's all going to get a little bit weird. But we're going to try and like hook up an LLM and start asking questions. And then off the back of that, the other thing that we're going to have an attempt at is sometimes companies just want a nice looking, like, you know, I don't know, iPad app that sits in an app store that's, you know, branded up and everything's nice. And then when they've got a new customer or whatever come on board, sorry, my face is in the way, there we go, iPad app. When a new customer comes on board, they can download the application, they can log in using whatever details. And so, you know, if you're third-party user over here, you then use the iPad app. And the iPad app, of course, needs to be able to get data as well. So you've then got a layer that then hits the API back here and also then queries for the same data. Now, Seku OLAP could be anything. It's just, you know, the application that we manage. But this could be a range of different services sat inside of a cloud environment that serves up data that allows you to be able to interact with it. And so, you know, if you're using AWS Bedrock to be able to deal with MCPs, you might be handing off to, you know, another modeling facility, and that's absolutely fine. If you're using an iPad app, you've definitely got more stuff than just Seku OLAP sat here, but like I'm trying to keep it simple, where you've got an API boundary and then stuff going off internally in a cloud environment. So don't start judging me on the on the accuracy of how this would actually play out in real life. But this is the type of flow that we're now going to try and have a look at inside of the rest of today, where we build in interactions with LLMs in a simplistic model, and then we're going to try and build an application that then leverages the REST APIs of Seku to then be able to build out some sort of UI that I have not yet defined, and we will figure out. So let me move back and get stuff set up. So, okay, let me move the mic around and ponder this a little bit more. So as I find my, sorry, I know you're over here and I'm looking over here. I'm trying to find the right screen. If I hit the screen share button and I open up CMux again, I am then going to hit transition. Okay. So we're back here in the terminal because, well, it's where Claude Code sort of lives. And we're going to say, why am I not typing? Okay, Claude, can you use the MCP server in Seku to show me which cubes are available? So whilst that's working, he's going to have a think about that, and as ever, the Anthropic web service is throwing up a little bit. We're going to sort of try and do two things at once here, and so we're also going to open up another one, and we're going to go to here. There we go. So I'm going to make create a demo project. And so what I'm going to do, and this, I haven't put any thought into this, so this is going to be an interesting a couple of minutes whilst we try this, but can you bootstrap a Flutter project for interacting with data in this system? So Flutter is a cross-platform framework that allows you to build out a number of different applications using the same code base. Again, I believe in the same ilk as GWT. It's a Google framework that allows you to build basically like an iOS native app, a web app, an Android app, all in the same code base, allowing you to like interact with it. So because he's not stupid, somehow he also knows that there's well, we've been talking about Seku, Mondri, and OLAP stuff, and so he says, how do you want to access the sales data? We're going to access this data using Seku, or attempt to. So we're going to use that to then build that out. The reason we do this, like, yes, you could obviously build a database straight into the back end, but in doing this, it gives us still that same row level security of you using it. It gives us the caching out of the box so that when someone goes and uses the app twice and sees the same data twice, it's not hitting the database. There's a range of different reasons why you might do this. Equally, it's not wrong to just connect this thing directly to Postgres and get it to write a query. So depending on what makes the most sense at the time of you doing it, you know, there's a bunch of different ways that you would architect this, you know, to allow for the interaction that you need. And we might try this and find it doesn't work, and then we'll go and use Postgres anyway. But yeah, anyway, so where's the state? What's the state of the Seku server that the app will talk to? It is running because we were just looking at it. And so here we go. So he's then going to ask a few more questions and we'll see what happens. So running server is the cleanest path. Here's some points. What should the Bootstrap Flutter app actually do in V1? And so we're going to keep it, we're going to keep it really simple. I hope we're going to keep it really simple. We're going to ask him for a fixed dashboard. I have no idea what Claude will do at this point, but we're going to go through this and ask him to create a Flutter app that will allow us to be able to see this. I want to be able to build it for iOS and Android, which might make me sad in a minute. And I definitely want to build the web one because that's really what I can show you on the screen without running Xcode and a whole bunch of emulation stuff, which might work. I don't know. Submit the answers and off he goes. We will come back to that shortly. So down here, we have asked Claude to use the MCP service to connect to the local MCP server. Inside of here, we've got then a number of different cubes that he has returned, you know, that are useful to us. So he says that FarmerRx is alive and up and running. And so from that, we should then be able to say, okay, can you tell me something about the geographic distribution of patients against the drug sales in FarmerRx? And he's going to go off and then use the MCP connector, or hopefully use the MCP connector to go and find that out. Whilst that's running, I'm going to swiftly come back over here. And so he says that I have what I need in scope. I'm still waiting on the connection details. Please drop them in when you can. All the other stuff. So connection details are HTTP localhost 8080. Because it's a demo, user pass is admin. And then he says, in the meantime, here's the approaches and the design. Proposed approaches: direct DO and session cookie off, Flutter talk straight to Seku, DO with a cookie jar. He's talking about authentication. And this is still why you can't just go and vibe code your way through this. I said this at the start. I'm going to say this again. I'll probably say it at the end. But like, there's a bunch of stuff in here that's using your data in a sensitive way. And so if you were going to do this in real life, you need to make sure that the authentication layer and the authentication handling is tip top, especially if you're going to expose that data to people who aren't in your core circle, maybe external users, but also just internal users. The majority of data leaks around the globe come from internal sources deciding to take that data out with them. And so making sure that your vibe coded application is secure, it should be top of the list, because over the next couple of years, I expect a whole bunch of lawsuits and what have you as top secret sensitive data accidentally gets vibe coded its way out onto the web. So this stuff does mean, you know, quite a lot. We're going to skim through it, but it is important to bear in mind when you're building these apps out. You know, and so he says, do you want to use session or raw MDX, Riverpod and FL chart? He then says, or fewer dependencies if you use HTTP package, but you hand roll your cookie session handling, or a proxy that sits in front of Seku. So he recommends I reckon he's probably off to a decent start. So let's go with, you know, can't spell, doesn't really matter, but like proposed approach A for the initial build out. And we'll see what happens. So he's off doing some stuff. Approach here is, before I lock in the design, let me quickly probe the running server and confirm the REST contract. I can also say because Seku is open source, so if you want to be able to run this locally, you can do. If you want to inspect the source code, sure you look at projects, Seku. So just sort of give him a point to the source code if he wants to go and have a look, which will generally, you know, probably make his life a bit easier. There is, of course, an awful lot of extensive information about Seku on the web, which they will have trained on, because Seku has been around for a fairly long time by now. He's then sucked up my point about the Seku stuff. This is basically his plan. So, like, you know, I could sit at this point and say, you know, go and figure out some more plans, do things before I write the doc. I should say, discover the data catalog once auth is done. I know those tiles look fine. So, you know, he's then going to have a look at the source code a bit. He's realized that it's basic auth, because out the box, that's all we really have. So he can also make adjustments to his plan at this point. And so, you know, he can make changes to Seku because this is local. Like, clearly you wouldn't do this if this was remote and this was an already running service, but like, I have the ability to be able to do that. And now he's going to have a look at like some of the URLs and make sure that's right. And then he's going to have a look at the data source. We will go back to here. Here we go. So you can see here, we've asked Claude some stuff. And here's what the PharmaRx Cube says about geographic distribution. Now, of course, we're using Claude Code on the command line. This could also be Claude Desktop. It could be ChatGPT, but it could also be anything that then wants to interact with a model on a programmatic basis. And so, you know, there's plenty of ways via Bedrock or Azure Foundry, whatever they call it these days, the ability for people to be able to go and run LLMs against data sources. So whilst we're interacting with it here, you could end up leveraging an LLM inside of Bedrock to be able to get information out of your model in a way that is more consistent than asking it to go and query a database, because a database, you know, you have to be able to tee it up with all the joins. You have to assume that it's going to follow those joins properly. What you're doing with a model like Seku, or any of the other semantic modeling tools that are out there, it really allows you to then be able to define what that model looks like, so you can trust the data that's coming out of the service far more. We also put stuff like data provenance and stuff in there, so that you can ask Claude where that data came from. He'll be able to like trace it back. But you know what you've got here, obviously, just before I go on, this is the fictitious data set. There is nothing real in here. I asked Claude to create 250,000 rows of fictitious data before we started this. This is the output of it. So don't try and match this up with real life. But you know, volume is essentially uniform across all regions. Revenue spread net is 3.3% between top and bottom. Top states by net revenue are California, New Jersey, Texas, New York, Michigan. California also has the highest dollar RX in the country, suggesting the brand player mix their skews toward higher price list prescriptions. Lower RX are Midwest states. Gross to net ratio is 78.6% statewide, meaning 24.1% of gross is going to rebates, discounts in aggregate, and that's worth slicing by player next. So then he says, do you want me to follow up with a rebate percentage by region, or pivot to state by therapeutic class to find where the region's revenue is concentrated? So we can say, let's do state by therapeutic class. He'll kick off. Also show me the data lineage and validity of these calculations when this is done. So we'll ask him for a bit more information, and whilst that's running, we will go back to the app that we're trying to build in real time. So, okay, both of your follow-ups are handled. The connection is farmer, and the 4 tiles stay as specified. He writes some more stuff. Once you approve, I'll invoke the writing plan skill to turn this into a step-by-step implementation. So, yes, please. Go ahead. So that's on its way. And as that's going, we will flip back here, and we've got a load more stuff coming out. And so this is like obviously how you can get information out of you know, your database in a far more managed manner that you can then rely upon to be able to then reliably add this. Because the other thing you might also do, and we've done this for a number of different customers over the years and months, is you know, leverage an LLM, but with inside the application that we're now building out using Flutter. So on top of the stats and analysis that you get out of your final app, you might also then say, well, I would like to have an LLM that then provides some written context for the output. And this type of stuff is the thing that will be able to drive that. So you can feed a prompt into a LLM. The LLM then goes and like repeatedly quizzes Seku, the OLAP cube, and gets that information back, and then goes and displays it to a user as textual summary alongside the application, which is also just returning the same numbers. But that allows you to show both like summary context and also application level data. Like I said, still adhering to that security boundary. And so if I had logged in to Seku and I was only allowed to see the Michigan stuff, in this table, you would only see, well, as New York's on the screen. If I had logged in as a New York user, I'd only get 1 row of output in this, but that row would then be of use for me. If I logged in as a Texas user, I could potentially only see the Texas information, but at the same time, I'm just serving the same model to the same people, and you don't have to deal with that at database level. This is very much done in the model. And the like summary for national and all that type of stuff would change depending on how you want to be able to display that information to secure users. So here we got state by therapeutic class, where you can see, you know, not much spend on gastro stuff. Immuno, though, is much higher. And a total spend across the different states at the far end. And obviously I've not asked Claude to like define, you know, what I want to see as an output. He's just gone and figured this stuff out by using the MCP server to then go and connect and analyzing the data. So again, once we've got story that's coming out the bottom, we've got information that's coming through. We've then got, I asked him how this was generated. So he's got some context that a normal LLM would not have, because obviously we created the farmer demo inside of this Claude. So he's got some context that's not like standard. But the Mondrian schema itself, net revenue, how that's been generated, this is all available to the LLMs, and so they can see how that is built out. And then how he's then going and using that stuff against the MCP server to then output that information. So validity checks I can vouch for. He gives a bunch of stuff and caveats about what he cannot vouch for from the OLAP layer. Obviously, it's synthetic data. He is aware of that. RX count semantics, net revenue definition. There's some stuff in here, but at least that way you can like figure your way out through, through the layer you're trying to do. Over here, he's still building this stuff with Flutter. Now, this will take a little bit of time because he's going to bring some things down. He's working through creating the MDX queries. So for anyone who doesn't know how Mondrian works and how an OLAP cube works, you don't use SQL. Is it still open? Yeah, okay. So if I go back here whilst that's building, and I just give you a bit more context, if I click the MDX button, this is the query language that these OLAP cubes work. Under the hood, it turns it into a database SQL query, but at MDX level, this is what you get out the far end. And whilst technically you can write it by hand, there's definitely nothing stopping you, I do not suggest that you try and do that, because, it's just generally a pretty lousy way of like writing queries. But some people that I know are absolute masters at writing MDX queries. And it used to be like a fine art, because doing stuff like date comparisons and what have you were always hard work. But yeah, so like if I click on open date filter here, like I don't have up-to-date data, but you could say like, I want to see the last n days, I want to see month to date, I want to see year to date. All those queries really then get written into MDX. And so as you go and see it, this is the type of thing that you would then get access to. If I go back, he's still going. I will leave him to it. The other stuff that we didn't sort of touch upon inside of Seku earlier is like things like drill through. So if I want to understand how some of this data is made up of, I could say, well, I want to drill through this existing query and see some more stuff. And this will then obviously pop out, some of the stuff you're looking at with drill through and the various fields that you selected. Along with drill through, you've also got drill across, which is then technically, if they were connected, how you get from one cube to another, and also be able to see various connected elements. Something beeped to me. Here we go. So the plan is complete. I will tell it to do sub-agent driven, and we are off and running. Whilst that goes, I am going to take another quick break, and I'll be back in 5 minutes or so, where we will go through the application that is built. We will talk about how it currently functions, the stuff that you would do differently in real life, and sort of sum up where we've got to today. So we will be back shortly. Go and take 5 minutes, and I will see you all on the flip side. All right, welcome back. We've still got stuff building all over the place. So there's a couple more things I want to show the audience today. Hopefully, if I can get them running, which of course is the standalone application that then uses the core model to be able to serve data, continue to adhere to whatever security is enforced on that data set. Which obviously makes life a little bit easier. But also that app is then live. The data is always fresh. You haven't got you're not having to redistribute Excel models all the time. You can give secure access to that data. Now, of course, there is, as much as it pains me to say it, still an awful lot of Excel usage in this world. Of course, it's fine. I'm only joking. But at the same time, the way that you interact with that data, you want to be able to try and make sure that you only have to distribute that Excel model once, and that if you've got more frequently updating data sets, that data can be refreshed without having to redistribute the Excel spreadsheet, but still adhering to the data access that you have adhered to for this entire project. This is the entire reason that we sort of step through this process, is thinking about data access, data security, along with the validity of that data. And just makes distribution quite a bit easier. So what we're going to do, or what we're going to attempt to do, is demonstrate a couple of different things. In the short term, what I want to be able to do, whilst these things are still building, is just explain a little bit, in terms of some nerdy stuff, what's going on with Seku and why we deal with it like we do. So let me find the browser. Here we go, transition to that. Okay, so as I mentioned before, Seku itself is open source, and so inside of this repo is basically everything that has been going on over the course of the last few weeks, months, and years to date. You will find it at github.com/spicyourdata/Seku, and if you want to be able to run this stuff in a standalone manner, you can absolutely do that. There is nothing stopping you just spinning this up, and everything that you've seen today is open source, free to use. And we have a lot of stuff in the pipeline in terms of, ensuring or attempting to ensure that the user experience is improved and made better, so that people can feel like they're in a modern analytics environment that allows them to do the bulk of what they need to be able to do. Now, like I said, Seku has been around for a long, long time, and so there's an awful lot of history in here, but it has been rebuilt recently to support Java 21. The UI has been rewritten in Svelte, and so that type of thing is what we want to be able to do. Modernize it, make it suitable for modern web technologies, all that type of fun stuff, and also the API endpoints for MCP and what have you. They're all in this repository. There is also a published Docker image, so you can spin this up. And if you want to find out more, of course, you can go to seku.bi, where you'll find access to a live demo. You can start a free trial, and you can book a walkthrough and just talk to me or talk to one of the team who would be happy to show you how to set this stuff up. Now, of course, not every organization wants to be able to run their own stuff. And so we also have Seku Cloud. I won't give you a running demo of Seku Cloud today, but it is a hosted environment that allows for Seku to be leveraged whilst not having to manage or host it yourself. We of course manage it for you, and you bring your own database or bring your own data, and we can hook it into Seku Cloud so that you can do basically everything that we've gone through today, but in a managed environment rather than it being made up and hosted by yourselves, which of course may also incur data security issues and the like. So whilst I babble on, let's just transition back to my face. We're going to try and do something that I was working on yesterday with the team, and see if we can connect this thing, connect to it. So insert, hold on. I've got to remember how Excel works, so you just got to bear with me. Tools, Excel add-ins. Yeah, he's forgotten. Claude's messing me around, so if I'm just going to chuck him a screenshot. We're going to see where we get to. So one of the things that we were building out, and so going back in time a little bit, Excel support has historically been provided by what's known as an XMLA endpoint to Seikoo or Mondrian in general. But the problem is that that is only valid in the Microsoft environment. Like, you cannot run that outside of Windows. So any OS X user, any Mac user is going to, struggle because there's no direct connection between Seikoo and Excel inside of a Mac. So we have been building a add-on that works both inside of Windows, it works inside of OS X, and it works inside of Office 365 on the web. And that is going to allow for, on-demand access to the data itself, but without having to deal with the XMLA connection that exists today. So the reason I'm babbling on is because Claude is trying to figure it out. It says I've got to quit Excel and start again. So there we go. So I'm going to don't save Excel. Okay. Quit Excel. And I've got to say done to him and he's going to do something. There you go. Told you some of this was Seat the Pants development work. This is what happens on a Bank Holiday Friday. I'll show you what's going on though. If I transition to this screen. So I'm trying to load up the development version of the Office extension that we built. So he's relaunching it. Once it opens, start a blank notebook. Create. Insert tab. Let's see if he's right. Insert. So it's the puzzle piece icon. This is where I go wrong with all these things. Sometimes I'm just like, are you making things up, Claude? Insert object. Pivot table form from picture shapes. I can't see a puzzle piece. He did this to me yesterday. But he did also say go to add-ins, which is what I did yesterday. So Excel add-ins. Give him a couple of screenshots. Whilst he's thinking about that, we'll see how the platform build-out's going. So you can see he's been working. And we're now through tasks 1 to 4, which was building out the initial frameworks, some of the connectors, all that type of stuff. Now he's working on the repository interface, the Seikoo client, so he's gone through about half of that build. And then also had some code review done on it and write some tests, all that type of stuff. So it's pretty in-depth. But like I said, like I wouldn't for a second build this and then declare it done. There's a whole bunch of different stuff to be able to deal with. Anyway, so whilst that's still ongoing, we will continue arguing with multiple Claudes, trying to get the various bits up and running. But as you can see, let's command and manage again. That button wherever you click is the wrong one. When it's just like, I think you're a bit out of date, Claude. Not that one. That one, is it that one? Ah. Is it this one? Don't know, because Excel seems to be stuck loading. I guess it does look like a puzzle piece. That's called. I don't know how long it takes to load these things normally, so we will see. But yeah, so to be able to facilitate use of Seku using Excel by allowing us to build an open, what's it called, Office.js add-in, really allows us to be able to leverage, the best parts of Seku and the model that goes under the hood with Excel users, and allowing them to use the same data sets that everyone else uses from a web perspective or from an app perspective, to allow them to be able to distribute this data, but also keep it fresh over time, so that users can then log in using their credentials, hit the refresh data button, the data gets updated, the pivot tables that they're already looking at gets sorted out. And quite what's going on with the fact, like, this isn't even just a Claude thing. Why the add-ons is like just hanging is an interesting question, because I do not know, but it's sat there trying to load whilst not actually getting anywhere. So that's a interesting issue. Whilst that's going, this one's still going. Reviewer approved a follow-up, so he's going to fix a few things, won't fix a couple of other things. So that's task 5 done, task 6 done, task 7 done, task 8 done. So he's getting there. I think there must be 10 tasks. We've got through 8 of them. That's the one, the add-in tab. That's the web add-ins flyout, completely different from but it doesn't actually load Claude. That's the problem. I move this over here just so I can do other stuff whilst trying to keep that loading spinner open. No, I can't. As soon as I click away from it. Amazing, Excel. So, all right, he's going to try something else, which is useful because I can't open the loading screen. As we wait. Oh, here we go. So, yeah, Seku for Excel, completely untested with this latest build, so this is going to be fun. Localhost 8080, let's try that. Yeah. So I need to tweak this because this is some of the extended functionality we were building in yesterday, which is the ability to then connect to a number of different Seku services. So you can see here anyway, we've built this sidebar which allows you to then define which servers you connect to because it may be greater than one. And then also, once you've logged in, obviously then interact with the data. So we'll attempt, whilst we're still chuntering away doing other bits and pieces, to get that fixed up so that we can show how this works. This is some of the tweaks we're making yesterday though, because you need to be able to deal with different technical pass-throughs. Change the server URL. Okay, so he reckons if I do this, and do this, we will connect. Let's see if he's correct. Admin. Still an error, but we're getting there. This time we've got through the localhost bit. Now it's undefined is not an object, evaluating roaming.set, whatever that means. So Claude is working on fixing that up. And over here, as the application's built out. So now task 9, the dashboard UI, this uses FLChart 1.x and Riverpod 3.x and replaces main.dart. So the implementer must also remove the stale generated widget test, marking in progress and dispatching. So he's going to do task 9, and then you can see of this app build out, task 10 is the live verify and write the README. And at that point, if it's gone well, we'll be able to see something on the screen that would be cross-platform. It would work as a web app. It would work as an iPhone app. It would work as an iPad app. It would work as an Android app. All from the same code base. I'm sure it's going to look reasonably lousy, whatever comes out the far end of this, but you get the idea as to like what you can then go and build out using the same data bits and pieces. Hold on. So he's going to fix some stuff in Excel, and we're going to sit here and wait for this to go through. Now, oh, there we go. As I said it, task 9 done, FLChart needs no adaptation, new widget set passes, analyze clean. So he's going to review the UI, and then we'll launch this, and we'll see what it looks like for a quick pass at writing a app that underpins the same data set. So if you remember, let's just go back to where we were. So if I look at this one, and then transition this for you guys. So if you guys remember, we started here with this Excel spreadsheet. Now we had a workbook, it had 250,000 records in it. It had a number of other supporting tabs and some pivot tables and a couple of charts. You know, that type of stuff allows us to be able to distribute that to end users, but what it doesn't allow you to do is be able to manage it safely, sanely, or deal with things like user access permissions or anything like that particularly well. So this is the problem we're trying to solve here. To be able to demonstrate this, we then built an analytics model that then sat over the database that we then loaded up in between, which is a Postgres database. And we sent that to Seku OLAP, which then allowed for people to be able to interact and create dashboards directly over the database, removing the need for the Excel distribution if you give people access to the AI. Then we used the LLM to be able to interact with the same data to prove that we could then use Claude or pick your other favorite LLM provider to analyze the data that's in the OLAP cube and the Seku server that still adheres to the same security. I keep banging on about data security, but all these people have the same security rights regardless of their entry point. And then over here, we've got an iPad app, which allows for another user to be able to connect to that database via the input over there. So you're all connecting to the same model, the same data. Now, the other bit that we're now working on, just to finish this off, to try and display it properly, is we now have Excel over here. Sorry for my lousy writing once again. Excel. And we've got another user who's then still using Excel, but then still connecting to the data source over here. And that really allows for such flexibility in terms of the way that the application is designed, deployed, and configured. You know, it really just allows for that flexible access to the data whilst not building the same model multiple times. And that's really what you're trying to do in all of this, is like define it once and use it everywhere. So that's what we're in the process of building out in real time whilst everyone watches me. And I was about to show you, well, in fact, we'll transition back. You can have a look. So I have now got as far as active. says it's connected, but I can't actually get into it. So I need to get Claude to tweak that. So continue, because Anthropic's having a bit of a wobbly because it's Friday and they've all taken the day off. Continue. Now it says that I have connected, but I can't get to the cube list. So it needs to figure out that bit, because you can see here, you know, Claude's built out this bit. You know, and this is tip of development type build out, because this is literally what we were working on yesterday to allow for multiple sources rather than just one Sekou source. So this is real-time design and development. There we go. So he's going to work through that. We'll see where we've got to with the dashboard UI. The reviewer has approved the remaining items are non-blocking polish. I'll do one tight cleanup pass on the worthwhile ones that align with your coding standards, and then skip the purely cosmetic notes. So he's doing a bit of a cleanup. There you go. This is like, you know, real time, how you do stuff with multiple Claudes. So he's working through that. This one's working through this one. Eventually, hopefully. Aha. Maybe it's just a flow thing. Aha, there we go. So he'll probably rebuild this whilst I'm in the middle. So what I might actually do is just stop him. So that's just a flow thing. But you can see here now, we've got this Farmer RX cube. If I select Farmer RX, and then we'll have a look at what measures we're interested in. So again, we were looking at quantity, rebate rate amount, net revenue. So I can select those as the measures. I then want to be able to pull in some of this information. So this is the cube that we wrote at the start of today. You might struggle to see this, and I can't make it bigger because it's Excel. But like, you know, this is the cube that we were working on today. I'm going to select from this again because we've been looking at it, region and state, and then year and month. If I hit next again, I could optionally filter it. I don't want to. I'll review that, and then I'll hit insert, and we will see what happens. There we go. So this bit I can make bigger. If I click on zoom to 200, you know, what we've built here is a query that then is querying Sekou, the same Sekou server we've just been looking at. It's pulled in the various fields that we want. So we've got region, we've got state, we've got year, we've got month, we've got quantity, we've got rebate amount, we've got net revenue into this sheet. Sorry, I'm trying to remember my my Excel phrasing. So we pulled this into the sheet. You can, if your data changes, come in here and you can hit the refresh button. Of course, I'm authenticated on a specific server, so it only pulls the data from the server that you've asked it to. And then if I click on the pivot, I'm assuming, here we go. If I then say I want to be able to analyze by region and state and year and month. Sorry, my pivot table Excel knowledge is useless. But then if I chuck rebate amount in, there we go. So I have now connected, you know, my Excel sheet, my Excel instance, to a live Sekou instance that's sat in the background, serving this data up in exactly the same way. So if I went and ran this same query inside of Sekou OLAP, you would basically see the same output both times. Same numbers, same security. So if I logged in and I only had access to Midwest, I could only see Midwest stuff. If I only had access to Northeast, I would only see Northeast stuff. And then people can come in here and, of course, do their standard Excel pivot table stuff. Come back a week later. If the data's changed, hit the refresh button, and this pivot table will update to show the latest stuff that is available to a user. And so this is what makes like the flexibility of these models like really powerful across an entire organization. So I will leave that one alone. We'll see where this has got to. So this is the final step. The stuff that we were talking about earlier. He's tried to connect to the Sekou server. He says it's working fine. So I'm going to say, please, can you stand up Flutter using the web app version so we can see it. There we go. So when he gets to the end of it, he will then hopefully launch the web app version of this app. I don't think I've got the Xcode stuff installed that would launch it as an iPad app, but we might give that one a go just out of curiosity in a bit. But yeah, this is basically Claude working through the final bits of a very basic, very simplistic app build out that would give you a cross-platform application that started life as an Excel model, but now you want to be able to really like turbocharge your users. And so rather than give them a model that is standalone, that only updates every so often, what you're trying to give them is an application that is specific to their use case, is tailored to their needs. You know, in reality, we would sit down and work as a product team to figure out exactly what that application is supposed to look like, how it's supposed to behave, how the users would work with it, and then how we would build that application into something that really drives value to your organization. That is the type of product build out that we often, we always work through, because just showing a dashboard as this thing is going to pop up on the screen is not the answer to most data consumption issues. What we want to be able to figure out is how to really allow value from, or prove value from that data, rather than just showing the data. So it may be that the app in reality did more than just showing some numbers on a screen. You could also integrate it into workflows, your customer end, to really allow for them to be able to leverage the data that you are, in the process of selling them effectively. So where have we got to? He's working through the code reviews still. So we're not far away. As you can see, he's been working for 42 minutes. Now, if you built this using a different framework, if you built this purely using a web app technology, for example, it would have been far quicker. This is definitely a slower way of being able to deal with the development of these things. But in reality, that is the best way to be able to do it if you want to be able to deal with cross-platform applications. There are a number of different cross-platform applications that really allow for you to be able to build, either native apps, because again, you've got a bit of a shim going on here, but you might want to build something that's basically just a thin wrap around a website, cheap, quick, effective. But you might also want to build something that feels and acts far more like a polished application that has all the elements of an iPhone user, what they would come to expect. And so depending on what you need in terms of output, and there's also a trade-off with cost, price, builder time, all those types of things, and whether or not you want to just focus on just a web app, or if you just want to focus on iOS, or if you want to have an Android specific app, these are the types of decisions that you make at the start that allow for working out what direction you take, because you don't want to necessarily get down a route that builds yourself into a corner. And so by doing this, and allowing for this type of product development to happen at the start, that's the type of stuff that will allow you to work out where you want to go, what you want to do with it, and not build a bunch of stuff and then realize you've gone the wrong direction. Yeah. So that's the type of stuff as we go through it, you end up building towards. Let's have a look. Let's go back here. And so just from a project perspective, if I make this a bit bigger, you can see what Claude's gone and done here as well. So from a product perspective, it's built out a number of different folders, which obviously contain various bits of application specific code. So inside of the web version, you've got an index, you've then got some icons, you've got the test fixtures. We haven't given Claude any great guidance. This was by design. I want to prove out that you can go and build this stuff without doing too much to affect it. But like I said, you definitely wouldn't take this to a production environment. But inside of lib, you've got providers, you've got a Seku config type area, features, for the dashboard, so you see these Dart files, and then you've got different bits of runners, iOS stuff. So if we have a look just for, having a nose around, if we have a look at lib, features, dashboard screen.dart. So the Dart file is the bit that makes it cross-platform, because the stuff in here ends up getting compiled then for each environment. So you've got scaffold, you've got an app bar widget, which has been defined somewhere. I assumed it would be at the top, but maybe it's not. You've got the app bar, then you've got the body of that widget, you've got boxes, various bits that go with it. And then you've got this KPI summary. And so, these are the bits that get pulled in from the different widgets that have been built out to support the object-oriented design of all of this. Okay, what's he doing? He's trying to launch it. CORS is not enabled on Seku. The pre-flight options return 403, so a browser would block Flutter web app from calling Seku cross-origin. The clean fix for a live web demo is the same origin serve, the Flutter behind the reverse boxes. Okay. So he's working on that. Web build succeeded. Because we've got two different web services, they come from different places. Now, we could change Seku to match it. Basically, what he's done, though, is stick another small web service, a little bit like it was doing with the Excel one, sticks that over the front to be able to then service up. So localhost 9099, let's give it a go. There we go. I told you it would look like garbage. That is not a surprise, because we gave him absolutely nothing to look into. The web app is live, 9099. Chrome extension isn't installed. That's fine. So this is the data coming from the Seku server now being displayed using a cross-platform Dart web app, and then that would then allow for you to also be able to do this inside of iOS device. Let's see if we can ask him. Can we do this in the iOS? He may tell me that this is impossible, but it'd be interesting to see if we can just spin up the iOS version of this just to show the sort of cross-platform aspect. Like I said, having given Claude absolutely zero guidance, he's never going to build anything that looks particularly useful. It's not particularly interactive. The top boxes they do sort of work, but they're too tall, it seems. Yeah, there we go. If I scroll, they appear in the screen. So, there's a whole bunch of stuff that he has not done properly, and you would then go and clean up. He's going to start the iOS simulator. We'll see if that works. Yeah, but again, so the user inside of Excel, the user inside of this dashboard, the user inside of the Seku Analytics, and the user using the LLM directly with Seku as a model, then really see the same data from the same place. Now, they might create different queries and get different answers, but basically it's the same stuff on every screen. So if I go back to, I've still got the tab open. Yeah, if I go back here, the same data. We've taken it from that Excel spreadsheet. We've put it into a OLAP cube inside of Postgres. And now we're being able to load this in a multitude of different places. And it appears that Claude is going to try and launch this using the iPhone emulator. And we will see what happens on the screen once he does. Simulator is booted. Now build and launch the app on it with the dev config. And we shall see. It's the first iOS build, includes CocoaPods and Xcode complications, so it takes a few minutes running in the background. The build is running. Okay, whilst that's running, we'll just go back to looking at what we're looking at. So yeah, we've gone from an Excel spreadsheet standalone to a analytics environment where we can run the comparisons and do interactive analytics. We've got Seku then also giving us access to Excel models to be able to then show that stuff inside of Excel. And now we've got, a rather crusty looking but functioning web application that allows us to be able to then look at exactly the same data with exactly the same model. And once he finally gets there, he will then deploy the application into the iOS device, and then you can run the application using iOS as well. And this really is the flexibility of what we try and do as an organization and why we try and build these things, because allowing all these types of data accesses takes a lot of thought, planning, and effort that, but at the same time reduces the total cost of ownership of that data inside and outside of your organization. So there you go. That's basically it. Like I said, I wouldn't build this application and ship it, not only because it looks bad, but because also it will not be secure. Deploying Seku inside of an organization is also something that takes time and effort if you were going to take that route. But of course, there are many different platforms that do similar things. So, it's worth taking a look at whilst he still works through this iOS install. Are we going to get there? I want to keep going until he actually loads the thing up, because that would be cool. But yeah, obviously from a product perspective, from a platform perspective, serving the same data consistently and securely across an organization is imperative, because especially in the modern era of the supply chain hijacks and all the things going on that cause issues inside of an organization from an InfoSec and security perspective, that is something that is going to take, effort to manage, effort to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so, as an organization, trying to unify and standardize your data access, your data security, and your data organization is something that, takes time and effort. Apparently I have to go and download iOS simulator. So I'm not going to do that. He is trying to build the Mac OS version. We won't hang around for that. I want to say thank you to anybody who's popped in today, come to say hello, paid any attention to my ramblings for the last few hours, because like I said, there wasn't much of a plan. I hope that some of this has been useful. And that you've learnt a few things. If you need any help, support, guidance, whatever, you can find everything about us over on our spiffing looking website at conceptcloud.com, where we showcase some of our services, the projects that we've worked on, some of the cool stuff that we do as a company. And, I'll tell you what, look at this. I will flip back and show you this one. If I go back to screen share, there we go. So this is the OS X native version. And again, if I downloaded the iOS version, this is my point. You get to use the same application across a bunch of different work surfaces. And so this one, if I package that up, would be a iOS downloadable. That would allow for a user to then be able to interact with that application as if it was built for OS X. So anyway, as I was saying, having got through that, if you want to be able to get some help, support, or find out more about what we do as an organization and how we can support your organization, you can go to conceptcloud.com and you will find a lot of stuff about what we do. how we do it, some of the projects we've worked on, some of the more interesting bits, and also the services that we can provide to you. And that is that. Thank you very much for tuning in. Yeah, it's been an interesting few hours. I hope you've seen how we can go from almost nothing to a deployed product, a deployed analytics environment in reasonably short order. Yes, I tuned the data to make it work for this example, but you get the idea. And how to help with regulated data support and delivery in a world that an environment that obviously lends itself to putting a bunch of thought, time, and effort into that, because who knows where your data is going to end up if you're not careful about it. Okay, my name is Tom. Thank you very much again. I will speak to you all soon. Bye for now.